Hi and welcome back to my channel. I know it's been about a week since I've done any video reviews. I've been reading non-stop. In fact, I think I read 15 or 16 books last week. But I also had headaches and I just did not feel like getting in front of the camera. So now that the headaches are gone, I thought, let's go ahead and bring you up to speed with some of the books that I have read. So this particular video is probably, it's a toss-up between this and another book as to whether it's my favorite book of the year, but it's definitely going to be one of my top 2021 books. And I'm popping up the cover right now. It's The Girl at the Back of the Bus by Suzette D. Harrison. Now, I just want to tell you a little bit about the book and even the cover image, and what I'm about to tell you is based on a Q&A session that the author Suzette D. Harrison had with the publicist at Bookouture, which her name is Kim Nash. And Suzette was telling Kim that this image of the bus is representative of the actual bus that Rosa Parks was on when she wouldn't give up her seat. And this was bus number 2857, and the bus has been replicated, and so I think the cover artist did a fabulous job. That's extra information that I got by participating in the Q&A discussion, and I'm so glad I learned that extra tidbit. Now, also, to tell you about the book itself is when I saw this title, I immediately thought of Rosa Parks. So I thought I was going to be reading a reenactment of what Rosa Parks went through, but what the author did is she used that historical piece of information to create an incredible fictional story that is going to be with me for a very, very long time. And I love how she did this. So that's a little bit of background about this book, The Girl at the Back of the Bus. It's a Bookouture book. It was released February 8th. Today is the 9th. And I love this book, as I said, top book, and I gave it 5 stars. Now, it's a dual timeline book. The first timeline is Montgomery, Alabama, 1955. And we have a young girl. Her name is Maddie Banks. She's 16 years old and pregnant. And I won't quite tell you who the father of her baby is because I don't want to give you any spoilers in this review. But her life has just become uprooted. And because of the shame of her, the decision she made that resulted in becoming pregnant, she was about to make another massive decision, and she was on her way to a location to carry out this decision that she was going to make. And what happened? Well, to refresh your memory or to inform you of what happened with Rosa Parks is back then with whites only and Negroes, or whites and coloreds, okay? You had very, very, very clear divisions, and this is right at the beginning stages of the civil rights movement, and these divisions were severe. So the cat just jumped on the recliner, which made it rock. The example in this book, okay, in the story with Rosa Parks, is when a colored person, and I'm going to use that term because of the time frame in which the first part of the story took place, would get on the bus, they would put their coins in, and then they'd have to get off the bus and go in the back door and sit in the back. There was white seating and colored seating. I don't like the word colored, but it fits in this context. Well, Rosa Parks was sitting at the very first part of the colored section of the bus. Well, the bus started to become crowded, and there was an older white gentleman that didn't have a seat. So the bus driver demanded, not asked, but demanded that Rosa Parks get up and go further back. But she was already sitting in what was the designated section. So she refused, and therefore she became an icon in Black American history because she was arrested, and that's the story. Now, of course, I grew up with knowledge of that story. This took place in 1955. I was born in 1960. So by the time I was in junior high school, this was part of, not a heavy part of the curriculum, because it depended on what school I was in at the time, whether I was in a mostly black school or whether I was in an integrated school or whether I was in a mostly white school. It really depended on, because my mother moved around a lot when I was a child, so it really depended on what type of school I was in as far as how much Black history was being taught. But nonetheless, I knew about Rosa Parks, and even more so, I was an avid reader from a tot. So anything that was even written or hinted about, I had read about at a young age. So that's the historical aspect that brings this story its life. Now, again, we're talking about 16-year-old Maddie Banks. And again, it's a fictional story. So she's on the bus, she's headed to a location, and she's done with the situation that she's in, and she's going to change it. Well, she witnesses the strength, the vivacity, the bravery that Rosa Parks imbued, and it resonated with her in a very deep place in her heart, and it caused her to change her mind. Now, Maddie was a strong young woman. Her life was not easy by any stretch of the imagination, whether it was the prejudice that was rampant or part of everyday life, whether it was her predicament, whether involving family, it didn't matter. Maddie was struggling. But once she decided that she wasn't going to carry out her decision about the baby, she was able to draw closer to her mother, and her mother became a true pair, and they did really well. Now, I mentioned already that it was a dual timeline story. So we jump ahead to present day, and now we're in Atlanta, Georgia, and we meet somebody named Ashley Turner. Now, Ashley Turner is a Black lawyer, very successful. However, her relationship is fractured. She's not receiving any fulfillment in her job. She wants to change her direction in life. And most importantly and most significantly, her grandmother is dying. So she goes home to care for her grandmother during the time that her grandmother is in hospice. She's there. Her parents live near her grandmother, but she is there and she's spending time with her grandmother. Well, while she's with her grandmother, she finds a stack of letters. They're old, they're fragile, and she starts reading them, and it looks like they're stories. Well, I'm not going to go too much further in what Ashley finds in these stories, because I don't want to give you any spoilers because I want you to read the book. Well, these letters that Ashley found, she was already connected to her grandmother through blood and through love, but these letters connected her and her grandmother, drew them even closer in ways that Ashley could never have imagined. So that's how that story began to evolve. But there was also another layer to this story when it came to Ashley's relationship with her other half. His name was Brad. They weren't married, and they love each other, but there were a lot of problems in their relationship. So the book dealt with that, and I loved that layer of this story. I loved Ashley and Brad. I loved what happened with them, and how what happened with her grandmother, even her mom, and how everything came together. And it was just a marvelous, marvelous book. It really, really, really was. I never even heard of Suzette D. Harrison before. And what's more is, even though I do a lot of blog tours for Bookouture, when this blog tour request went up, it was during the time that I was in that emotional black hole in November, December, in that time frame. So this book almost went right past me. Right past me. I got this book maybe 2 days or 3 days before it's going to be taken off of the NetGalley site. And with my review queue being massive, I don't know if I would have stumbled on this book. So I'm so glad I found it. It's going to stay with me for a long, long time. I'm sure this is going to be something that I reread. And if it comes out on Audible, I will put it in my Audible permanent library, because I think it's a fabulous book. So I want to thank Bookouture for this book for review. And I also will be putting a link for this in the description below at Amazon. Should you want to use my link, then as an Amazon affiliate, it would put a couple of pennies on my account, but it won't change the cost of the book for you. And I think that's about it. I feel like I want to tell you more about it, but I think we'll leave it at that. And I just want to encourage you to give the book a shot, because you're going to find that you will learn a little bit more about that history I told you about, and you will see how the author crafted this remarkable fictional story. All right, that's it. Thank you. Bye-bye.